I never imagined my life would come to this. A woman in her mid-40s, standing alone in a beautiful house, feeling more invisible than ever. My husband was always gone. His business trips stretched from days into weeks. When he returned, his presence felt like a formality, not a reunion. We barely spoke. Intimacy had vanished years ago. I kept up appearances, cooked, cleaned, smiled at neighbors, but inside, I was fading. It was early spring when he told me he'd be leaving again, this time for nearly a month. I nodded, pretending to understand. I always did. I didn't protest. I had accepted this life, or at least I thought I had. A week after he left, my stepson Caleb returned from college for spring break. He was 22 now, tall, polite, and had always kept a respectful distance. I'd helped raise him since middle school, so our relationship had always been formal, careful. But something had changed. His compliments, once casual, now felt personal. "You look beautiful today," he said one morning. I laughed it off, but my heart fluttered. We spent more time together, grocery runs, cooking, evening TV. I noticed how close he stood, how long his gaze lingered. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing. But I wasn't blind. I felt the tension. I felt seen. One evening, we sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the trees. He said he admired how I held the family together, how strong I was. I didn't know how to respond. I hadn't been praised like that in years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversations, the way his hand brushed mine, the warmth in his voice. I told myself it was harmless, but I was lying. The next morning, when he smiled at me, I felt nervous. I began craving the attention I'd been missing for years. Then came the Thursday evening. Rain pounded the windows. The power went out. The silence was thick. I had just finished dinner when Caleb walked in with 2 glasses of wine.
"Thought you could use this," he said.
I hesitated, but took the glass. We talked in candlelight. He opened up about feeling lost, about how being home gave him peace. Then he looked at me and said, "You don't even realize how incredible you are, do you?" I stared at him. "You deserve someone who really sees you," he continued. I wanted to tell him to stop, to remind him who we were. But I didn't. I said I often felt like I was fading in this house, like no one really saw me anymore.
He reached for my hand.
I didn't pull away. His touch was gentle, sincere. He leaned in. I should have stopped him. I didn't. Our kiss was slow, full of emotion we'd both buried. When it ended, I stood and said I needed to go to bed. I left him there in the dim light. Sleep didn't come. My heart raced. My mind spun. I knew it was wrong, not just a betrayal of my husband, but of everything I thought I believed in. But I didn't feel regret. I felt awakened. The next day, I avoided Caleb's eyes. We didn't speak of the kiss, but it hovered between us. The tension was quiet, but undeniable. I told myself it was just a moment, a weak lapse in judgment. But when his hand brushed mine again, I didn't move. Later that day, I caught him watching me, really watching me. He started staying home more, finding excuses to be near. Our conversations deepened. He asked about my childhood, my dreams, what I'd given up over the years. I began to see how much of myself I had buried. I told him we had to stop, that it couldn't go any further. He nodded, said he understood. But the next time he found me alone, he whispered, "You deserve more than being forgotten by a man who doesn't see your tears." His words stitched together parts of me I didn't know were broken. One night, he touched my face and said, "You don't have to keep pretending. You're allowed to feel something again." I didn't reply. The way I looked at him said enough. What followed wasn't planned. It was inevitable. I became a woman split between guilt and desire, between loyalty and the hunger to feel alive again. I told myself I was still in control, but I had already fallen. Caleb's break was ending. I saw it in his quiet moments. We didn't talk about what would come next. He didn't make promises. I didn't ask for any. The night before he left, he stood in the doorway and said, "I don't regret anything, but I don't want to ruin your life either." I nodded. My throat tightened. I wasn't sure if it was grief or relief. The next morning, he left. No goodbyes. Just silence. The house felt colder than ever. When my husband returned, he brought souvenirs and stories for meetings. He talked over dinner as if nothing had changed. He didn't notice how I avoided his eyes. I had given myself to someone else emotionally, physically. It showed.
But only to me.
I expected guilt. But mostly I felt sadness. Not just for what I had done, but for the years I had spent feeling invisible. Caleb texted once, "Take care of yourself." I stared at it for hours before deleting it. I knew we couldn't continue. I also knew I couldn't return to the life I had before. I had changed. In the end, I stayed in a marriage that looked intact, but felt empty. I lived beside a man who thought everything was fine, while I carried the truth alone. That's the real punishment. Not being caught, but having to live with the silence. I learned that love without attention is just habit. And attention without commitment is just temptation. Somewhere between the two, I lost a version of myself I'll never get back.